For the CircuitPython Parsec today, I wanted to extend the previous tip of using the Circuit Playground Bluefruit as a remote camera shutter for iOS devices. And this time, based on a tip that I believe maybe Sam J. Ohio made in the chat, take a look at using it as an intervalometer. And my apologies if it was someone else who had mentioned that last week. So this right here, let's recap. This is the Circuit Playground Bluefruit. I've got it in this little snazzy case right here. And I'm going to unplug it from USB. I just have a little LiPo battery there. And it is set up, as it was last week, as a remote camera shutter. So click right there. You can see it just took a photo with my iPhone here. However, an intervalometer is something that you can use to take multiple photos on an interval, hence the name. And so what I've done is added a little feature here where when I move the slide switch on the Circuit Playground Bluefruit, it moves into this 5 photo, hence 5 LEDs, intervalometer mode. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and watch it's going to take 5 photos. Click, 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 click. So this is great for capturing sports, for capturing motions, movements. You can have this moving, and rather than taking a video, you get a very distinct set of photos. Another great use for this I showed last week using a tripod. Now I've got this monopod here, so if I go ahead and put this phone on the monopod, I can hold this up over a crowd and take a series of photos, get the best one in there and avoid anyone blinking, without having to futz around with the phone settings. I know a lot of the phones have these things, but I don't know about you, but it is pretty rare where I'm with a group of people and we're trying to take a group photo or a selfie that anyone has the patience to set up the software intervalometers and burst photos and things like that. So this is a way to do that using the Circuit Playground Bluefruit. So the code for this, very similar to last week, but let's talk about it. So I'm importing time so that I'll be able to do little pauses between photos. I've got the board definition for pins. I've got the neopixels so that I can light them up for feedback here. I have the BLE, Adafruit BLE, and the HID libraries coming in to do all the Bluetooth stuff and the consumer control. It's consumer control volume up that tells an iPhone to hit the shutter, or volume down. I think they both work. And I'm using digital I/O since I'm checking pins for that slide switch and those buttons. I've set up the neopixels here to light up 10 neopixels. I define the BLE and the HID services, and I'm advertising this as a device. So on the phone, we go into Bluetooth settings and pair up with this Circuit Playground device that shows up. Setting up this button as my trigger button here, button A. And now you can see I'm also setting up the slide switch as a digital in-out board.slide switch with a pull-up resistor on there. Create the consumer control. Now I'm creating a state variable, previous switch state, to know if I've changed the switch so that we can light up the LEDs differently and also pick the proper mode for triggering. And I'm also doing a little bit of setting those colors and states initially before we even get to the main loop of the program. Then in the main loop of the program, I am checking to see if we're connected to Bluetooth, and when we connect, I go ahead and set my pixel to yellow initially. Sorry, my pixel to blue. Initially, it's yellow to say that we're not connected. Then we are always going to check the slide switch position to see if it's been changed. If it gets changed, then I have a little LED clear out. I set them all to 0. And then if the slide switch value is positive, that means it's to the left, and we light up just the first pixel. And if it's negative or false, then we set all of these 5 off on the right side to blue. Then we're looking for button presses. So again, button press, if the slide switch is off to the left, we just do, and let me turn the phone camera back on. I'll point that up. So we'll take one picture if that switch is off to the left by saying CC send consumer control volume increment. That sets the shutter. Otherwise, it means the switch is off to the right. And here's where we're going to take our multiple pictures. So I set the proper LEDs. I pause for a moment, and then when we are going to shoot through those photos. We flash the LEDs, the 5 LEDs, to white, send consumer control volume increment. I'm printing something just for debugging, and then I pause 0.15 seconds, and we can change that interval if we want it quicker. I'm not sure what the fastest this can do is. Then refresh the LEDs, and then we're complete. So you can play around with timings in there, and of course you could set up a more elaborate interface where you're using more of the buttons. I'm not using this one over here, maybe to toggle through some presets of how many photos you want to take or what the interval is, or you could start to get more complicated and use some of the cap touch buttons and more feedback there. But I wanted to keep this one simple. And so that is how you can set up an intervalometer using the Circuit Playground Bluefruit inside of CircuitPython. And that is your CircuitPython Parsec.